You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to, I don't even know how to start this. It's been so long. Welcome to a Life in Ruins podcast. This is episode 116. I'm your host, Carlton Gover, and I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Johnin. David's not here right now because he's up in the north excavating giants and mammoths beyond the wall. So he could not be here with us today. We miss him. It's been a while since I've been on, and Connor has been faithfully holding down the fort during my absence, and it is just amazing to see your face today, Connor. How are you doing, man?
Oh, I'm just doing fantastic, and we do investigate the careers of those living a life in ruins. In case anyone else missed that, you did so well otherwise. So no, it's really good to see you, and it's been hard because you've been in the middle of nowhere. So it's like we've basically not had real phone contact for like it feels like a month.
I have been MIA for quite some time. And what had originally happened is I just did field work. I was helping with the University of Colorado Boulder and Augustana University field schools. And I was told ahead of time that we had access to the internet there. So there's two internets. There's the guest and there's the password protected one. That's really great. I was told we finally had access to the password protected one. We were lied to. We did not have access. It was the wrong password. And any more than two devices are on at the guest Wi-Fi, it doesn't work. Trying to tell 31 college students to not be on the Wi-Fi is a difficult task in itself. And so we were unable to record. I only had service at site, which is on top of a bluff. We were staying down below in town in a floodplain. So I had like zero access to anything that mattered regarding this podcast. I had no control. We had a plan. Connor handled it super well and trying to reschedule folks. I just couldn't get on. And the one time I was going to go to the bar that had Wi-Fi to do it, there was a tornado in town and knocked out all the Wi-Fi and service. It was just, I was being told to leave this alone and let David and Connor run it, and run it they did.
And we did some things. We interviewed some people. It was really a sad thing because even when you were in Ukraine, you would talk to us most nights. And it's not that we're codependent anymore, but there is this oh, I'm going to talk to David and Carlton today and they're going to send me memes and make me happy. But no, I just had to deal with David and his, lack of planning and insanity and crazy life.
I had better cell service and access to internet in Eastern Europe than I did in small town Nebraska. That is true. These are facts. Yeah, but otherwise it was a really fantastic 5 weeks. It was amazing to get back out to the site that I was promised to have worked at for the past 3 years, and which we haven't been able to for 2 because of the pandemic. And so I was grateful for the opportunity to get back.
So where is this place at? Give us the location. Yeah. What were you guys doing?
Yeah, so we were working at the Lynch site, 25BD1, for all those who know Smithsonian trinomials, at Lynch, Nebraska, which is in Boyd County in northeastern Nebraska, just south of the Missouri River in South Dakota. So really up there, up in a vacant part of Nebraska where primarily there's one high school in each county and they have enough people to do 8-on-8 football. So Lynch population 210, and when 35 people roll up, the population expands by, a fifth. So it's a small town, absolutely lovely. And for those that listen from the University of Wyoming and elsewhere, you're used to these small town communities, you know exactly what we're talking about. The site itself is part of the Plains Village pattern. It's ancestral Pawnee and Arikara, which we'll get to. And it's the most dated site on the Great Plains, thanks to me and Dr. Bamforth and Dr. Carlson. And it's also the largest site on the Great Plains for the 13th and 14th centuries. So it is a place of very immense social change, as well as changes in settlement patterns. So there's some really intriguing things going on at Lynch that have connections to the Mississippian world from Spiro, Cahokia, and up into Oneota territory in the Great Lakes. So there's something crazy going on up there, 700 years ago that eventually leads to the Pawnee and Arikara nations a couple 200-300 years later.
That's awesome. As a measure of size, how many bars does it have? So two?
Lynch,
One?
Lynch, Nebraska. It has two bars, and technically the bowling alley counts. So there's Bubba's, and that's whose shirt I'm repping. Bubba's Tavern. Love Bubba. Bubba is a huge fan and supporter and quasi.
If you're in Lynch, Nebraska, right?
Yeah,
Stop in Bubba's.
Quasi sponsor of the field school. Everybody has his hats and shirts. Like, there's the K&K bar, and then there's the bowling alley, and so the double K bar. So double K bar, you go there, and they got Bud Heavy and they got Bud Light, and that's it.
Bud Heavy.
And a pool table, and then Bubba's is way more, full bar. It used to be a restaurant prior to the floods in 2019, which we've talked about before. It used to be a pub, and so like way more alcohol choices. Like very much, it reminds me very closely of. Oh gosh, I can't think of that. There's an analogy for Laramie, to be honest, but it's
would it be like the Ranger?
No, I think more like what's the one with the bullet holes?
Buckhorn.
Yeah,
the Buckhorn.
I think so. So I mean, like very much wide variety of drinks, mixed drinks. They also do pizzas, which are fantastic. It has a beer garden. Ooh. And sports bars. So we were there, during the Stanley Cup finals, man. Like all of a sudden the small town has like 20 something Colorado kids, and we're all going crazy at the sports bar while they're all just trying to relax after a hard, long day of, agriculture. And we're sitting there just like screaming, "Go Avs!" every time there's a goal, it is like, and locals would comment how we bring life back to the community. Cause it's not, most people who are young, once they go to college, they don't come back. They stay in Lincoln or Omaha or somewhere else. And so all of a sudden they have like 30 young people in the town who are enjoying the town. Like there's a movie theater in town. Like surprisingly, each one of these little towns in northeastern Nebraska has a thing that so one has the grocery store, Lynch has the movie theater. So they all kind of depend on each other for economies. And Lynch has the bowling alley. So even though it's a town of 220, it has amenities that, similar to maybe, Laramie, to be honest. Just cool. No fast food. Did
you see Top Gun? Did you get your own private screening of Top Gun? Is that what I hear?
Yes. So like actually... me and my brother saw it before we left, but then when we got to Lynch, Bubba, who owned, real name's Brad, he was so excited we were back because last time I was there, me and Bubba just really hit it off. He was so happy we were there and like was really interested about the archaeology. He drove down after seeing us pull up, and like I hugged him. He was like, "Hey, Top Gun's in town. I can get you a private screening. Who wants to go see Top Gun tomorrow night?" And they're like, "We're down. Like, let's do this." And so like he was so happy we were back. And he works at the movie theater too. Like he's an all around town man. And so the next day we were like, "Oh, by the way, we have a private screening." And the students were like, "Who is this man?" I'm like, "That's Bubba. You'll get to know him." And yeah, it was fantastic. Tickets were like $3. A bucket of popcorn was like $3. Like students were like, "These are the prices." I'm like, "This place is magical." Like hell, Wednesdays at Bubba's was all day happy hour. So beers were like $2.50, shots were $3. Like I spent an obscene amount of money at these places because everything was so cheap, and you're just like, "Oh, well, this is worth like 4 beers in Colorado." So it was an amazing town. They were super welcoming. We got to, take part in bowling tournaments, shuffleboard tournaments. I really love that part of Nebraska. Is a very special place in my heart. I spent a lot of my time outside of excavation actually connecting with locals. They seem to like me. I hit it off real well with rural folks. I just bring out the good old Virginia and start talking to people about, how's the deer hunting this year? Like, how's everyone doing? And just like get into that mode and make connections, because even though I'm leaving to go to Indiana, northeastern Nebraska is still going to be, I still want to work at that area. There's still so much we can learn. And so it's important to make those connections. And Steve Holland is from Lynch, Nebraska. Who we've talked about. Yeah, that we've talked about so much. Steve Holland is from Lynch. His ex-wives are from Lynch. And so he came to visit us, and I got to know Steve so well. Like I've met him before, but like he came up and we really got to talk, because he's the reason why people in that area love archaeology, because they know Steve, so they're not worried about us. And so everywhere we go, people ask, "Oh, do you know Steve Holland?" We're like, "Yes, we know Steve Holland." And it was like really fun to actually get to know him on a personal basis, and because he actually did a lot of Pawnee archaeology in his early career before he got into mammoths. And so, we talked about his Cerruti article, and we had really good conversations about it, and some of the experiences that he had at UNL when NAGPRA was passed. It was like, it really opened my eyes, because we've talked about him on this podcast in a very particular context because of the article was, rather. It had what's the word I'm looking for?
Connotations are big.
It had.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There were some repercussions from it, but like getting to know the man himself and, talking to him about like, why did it take 20 years to do this? And he's like, I had to wait, it was really contextualized it. And I actually look at that article in a much different light and what he was trying to actually say and the boundaries he was trying to push. And now I appreciate it more than just what I thought it was. So, I mean, it was just another one of those opportunities that made me reevaluate, how I think about archaeology, how I, think about the articles I read, because there's still humans behind them. And so, and also to get the students to, when we were outside talking, it was Dr. Bamforth, Dr. Carlton, and Steve, Dr. Holland, just talking. And it was like one of those, like, you've been there when George Friesen talks and with other professors, you don't say anything. You just want to be in that atmosphere. And I was like grabbing students. I'm like, this is a conversation you need to be next to and just shut up and listen. I was like throwing them all this. So now there's this whole circle of students and they're all like, why are they here? I'm like, just fine, just talk. We're not here. Just think we're not here. Just keep going. Because I've reflected on those same things with like when Friesen and Marcel
Kelly
and Bob, you're just take it in because those guys aren't going to be there forever. And those are the experiences that you'll remember. And just the things they were talking about was like things you don't normally hear professors or professionals talk about. So
yeah, that's what cool. I think like conferences and like, being in the field and meeting these people and having those conversations are almost better than reading their lit works, because they'll give you like, the literature, their articles go through a certain amount of editing, changing, whatever. But if you want like the real truth from a lot of these folks, you need to have those conversations in whatever context it is. I mean, I'd love to have Steve on the podcast and have him talk to us about this, if we want.
Oh yeah. I think that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was such a cool cat.
Those are like important conversations, like you were mentioning, man.
He showed up with like frozen watermelon and a cooler full of beer. He's like one of those old school cats. Nailed it's it. Like, like here I am, this is me. And like, he just genuinely cared and he still loves the field. And like, I actually got to sit down and talk with him about his Pawnee work. And he's like, and he cares about it a lot. And like the first thing he saw my tattoo and saw the cross piece, pipe and hatchet, he's like, you're Doug's Pawnee student. Like he knows that shit. And I was just like, oh yes, I am. And he was like, let's talk. And so it was like, outside of the mammoth context, I was like, yeah, sweet, man. Because I cited his stuff from like the 70s and 80s. And he just got a passion for large, hairy elephants that, he chased, So. Yeah,
he was the curator at the Museum for Science.
Denver Museum. Like, I've been following him. Right? Yeah. I've been like following him, this man, and it was just kind of cool to see. And he was just like, he was like, stop chasing me. Because I was like, oh, Dr. Steve Nash says hi. He's like, how does Dr. Steve Nash know me? I'm like, oh, well, I'm his postdoc. He's like, what? And and so it was a really fun experience. He wasn't the only visitor. Like we had the retired state archaeologist, Rob Bozell, show up, many members of the Nebraska archaeology program departments at History Nebraska. And we also had, we invited the Pawnee and Arikara out for site visitation for a week, which just went. It was just absolutely phenomenal to have them out and participate. And so like, it was a really busy 5 weeks, to be honest. I'd been sleeping so much. I didn't realize like how it just felt like a rodeo, man. I didn't realize like how tired I was until I got back. And even it's weird though, because like I swear to God, the air conditioner, I hear it whispering like, sign my form. Will you see this artifact? And I'm just like, Jesus, it's still in my head. And
but that's like the nice thing about like fieldwork is that you're fully engrossed in it and you're just there and you sleep well and everything goes well when you're in the field spending that time. It feels like
it was so cool. We had such amazing students. In fact, like I didn't learn this until like the 4th or 5th week. One of the volunteer editors of the APN, Laura, was one of my students.
What?
Like, I didn't. It was her partner was like, by the way, Laura listens to A Life in Ruins like all the time, and she works for Chris. She edits podcasts. I was like, why didn't she say anything? And she's like, they were, explaining, well, maybe she's just shy about it. And I was like, Laura, and she, then once I approached her about it, she's like, I love your show. I listen to every episode. I want stickers. Like, I work for Chris, and I'm just like, well, we could have been talking this whole time about this. Like, why did you wait till now? So huge shout out to Laura for being not only an awesome student, an amazing student, but a fan of the podcast.
Yeah,
and then
awesome.
Some of the students did mention that goddamn Hangover Trench Naps album, and so that came out. And
there will be a picture that will make the Instagram at some point of Carlton doing a dirt nap, I think, at some point.
Hangover Trench. It was. They were dying laughing because they're like, "Why does this exist?" And they were going through the songs, and they never got to Clovis Paradise though. They listened to the really bad ones, and were dying. I'm like, you guys should probably listen to Clovis Paradise or Ancient Aliens Idiots. Like, that one's pretty decent.
That's the gem.
No, it is. But they were also blown away. Like, the other thing that was annoying, like, do you know David Howe? And like, they would show me posts from Ethno, and I'm like, yes, I know him. He's a co-host on the podcast. They're like, what? And it was,
like,
I was telling them, like, because he was supposed to visit at some point. I'm like, David's coming. And then he never came. Like, every time I told students like something was coming, like the Pawnees were supposed to bring teepees at one point. Those never showed up. Like, David was supposed to come. He never showed up. So I got to like stop promising some of these things. But overall, yeah, I mean, it was quite a 5 weeks. It was in terms of excavation, like the heat index we had up there. I mean, hell, it was a lot at times. And, I got a really kick-ass flip-flop tan. Got a victory V's on my feet right now. Because my zeros, they broke the first day, and I was wearing flip-flops, which is fine. Everyone wears flip-flops in the Great Plains Archaeology.
That is the wildest tradition that I've heard of.
Yeah, it's like we were sending pictures to like friends out in like the Mountain West or the Southwest, and they're like, Plains archaeologists with like, we were barefoot most of the time. Like, once we had the trail stamped away and you could see where the cactus was, it was like, who needs shoes?
Are you guys like the Jimmy Buffett? You're just like doing Margaritaville in the middle of Lynch, Nebraska.
Man, we were playing, like, you should have heard the playlist we had going on, man. Like, people would visit and they're like, is this a beach party? Because, we're digging in Pleistocene sand. We're all, wearing tank tops and like short shorts. We're all barefoot, and everyone's just, at some points delusional from heat exhaustion. When it's over 100 degrees, the heat index is 115, 20-mile-per-hour winds, so there's no shade, and everyone's just a little loopy at the end of the day. It's just Lynch, Nebraska, man. And then we all go home and we have a swimming, like, it's crazy. It's like a summer camp. We'd excavate all day, go home, hit up the pool. The bar was only allowed on weekends, though. There was no bar outside of that. You only went to Bubba's Wednesday nights, and we made it count. But bowling alley's free. Like, it's different. It's a different experience that I'm used to at Wyoming. That was for sure. But I don't think that lessens the experience, right? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I think like some CRM crews, like, yeah, you can't, but like the vast majority, it's you're holed up somewhere. And what matters most is maybe not necessarily how long you can stand in a tent, and we did have people camp. Like, you had the choice of a room, or we had our fair share of tent campers, including Laura. Shout out to Laura. So it's just a different experience, but they did so well.
Well, and this has been quite the experience, and we're going to end this segment right now, episode 116 of A Life in Ruins podcast. Thank goodness David isn't here. We miss him. R.I.P.
Thank goodness, but we miss him. All right.
Welcome back to the saddest podcast on the Archaeology Podcast Network. This is A Life in Ruins. Carlton is here. David is not. Thank goodness.
Jesus.
Oh man, you missed it. Every time we mentioned your name in the last episode, I would go wah, wah, and do the sad trombone.
I really like the CRM survival guide.
It was pretty good.
That one was fucking. The one that you guys did before that, I couldn't understand the guest at all. We were playing it in the van on our way to the groceries, and all the students were like, "What is this man saying?" And I'm like, "I have no idea."
Well, that's like part because like Vinny's Italian, and then he's, and then he had exactly. Well, like he had the worst microphone, and we just couldn't make it work. So he had like a a PC microphone. So we're sorry for all those folks. Like, Vinny's awesome. We'll have him back on and we'll do it properly. But because we talked about the archaeology and there might be, because it's so new and the stuff you found this summer, it might not be a great topic, and it's probably going to be a topic of many conversations in the future and whatnot. Could you explain kind of in general what you see and what happened at Lynch and what makes it like kind of so important, besides it being like the first site in Boyd County?
Yeah, first discovered site. Yeah.
First discovered site. That's wild.
Yeah, I wish I could talk about what we found, but like I have to wait. We'll present it at Plains in Oklahoma City, Plains Conference this year. And, so I'm just at the moment a graduate student assistant. Like, I'm part of the project, but I'm not the PI. So I don't want to, I'm so goddamn excited to tell everyone what the hell we found, but we just can't. We can't. But generally, Lynch 25BD1, the site is over a mile long. It's over a bluff overlooking Ponca and Whiskey Creeks. It's over 200 acres of property. Based on the analysis that I did in one of my articles, Shield Chief et al. 2021, Bayesian analysis of the chronology of Lynch site. It's a single occupation site, contemporaneous with one another, and it is this coalescent. It's part of what we call, it is the first site of the initial coalescent variant, which is a taxonomic unit describing basically the coalescence of Plains horticulturalists into the centralized towns. And they really are towns, right? There's a fantastic...
Not a COVID variant, right? It's not a disease.
Not a COVID variant. No, not a COVID variant.
Okay.
But, there's that prevalence of calling anything Indian like a village, but if you look at what we know about modern excavations of Troy, based on its size and population, Lynch is larger in both. And Troy is a city, right? So this is really a town, if not a small city. Population estimates, roughly 6,000 people lived here and potentially more. It seems to be a bunch of people from central Nebraska, northern Kansas, came here. They have Central Plains tradition for, square wattle and daub houses, which we think they might be thatched roof. We're not quite sure. But there's also pottery styles that are coming in from the Great Lakes. So there's this mixture of locally made pottery that's Central Plains tradition, but what we call Oneota, and the term that we've coined as Central Plains Oneota folks. So there's something going on there. Either ideas or people are up there. We haven't seen Oneota houses quite yet, Oneota style houses, but there's a lot of people up there. That is the first time that this has happened. Northward on the Missouri River, the initial Middle Missouri, they're doing something similar, ancestral Mandans and Hidatsas. It seems to be a response to maybe a drought. So these people are coming together and forming something that then becomes Pawnee and Arikara. And the history of the site, there were excavations in the 30s. They were Civilian Conservation Corps, I believe. So not WPA, but the opposite one, CCA, Triple C. Mm-hmm. They dug these. You can see them on Google Maps still because they didn't backfill them. These two huge trenches. So we were excavating in between them to look for a house. We did magnetometry, which was conducted by Adam Weevil. And so we magnetometered damn near the whole site. And over 10,000 anomalies that we had to sort through and see patterns. And so we were pretty positive we were over top of a house, and that's what we were trying to excavate to. Dude, we found over a dozen projectile points. Only one was incomplete. The rest were complete. It was crazy. We found like 2 preforms that were finished and like a bunch of finished plain side notch points. Mostly Smoky Hill Jasper, which is like southern Nebraska, northern Kansas. Like it was, and also I think it's White River Group up in the Dakotas. Like beautiful points, really immaculate pottery. We found unfired clay, and it was just dense. It was just crazy, and we had 31 students. Because neither CU Boulder or Augustana have had a field school in 2 years. We have basically a backlog, and we had the pick of the litter. So there was only one freshman. The rest were predominantly seniors and juniors. So we have mostly adults, and it showed, because even though we had 31 students, it was the best crew I've ever had. And I've been doing field schools for like 6 years now, from Wyoming and CU Boulder and Fort Lewis College. Like I've seen them. Like I've been around field schools. Like I know how this operates. And these kids were just immaculate. And I shouldn't say kids, adults. They were just, they listened, they paid, and they just did such a wonderful job at excavating, and in close quarters too. And in conditions, I think I mentioned last time, like we got a week where it was over 100 degrees, and with humidity, and the wind was so strong we couldn't tarp. So like they were in it. So we would do work from 7 till about 11:30. We'd break for lunch, get back to site around be back by 12. So, and then we'd work till 2:30, 3 o'clock to try to avoid the heat as best we could.
Were you just sampling one house area?
Yes.
And how many times how many places have been sampled on Lynch?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's always, like you said, it's a mile long site. So how much testing has really been done there?
So there was the 1930s excavations that were, just like shoveling it out. There was another excavation, I think, in the 60s, and then another one in 2008, and then Augustan in 2018, Augustan and Boulder in 2019. But it's been sampled a bit. There's just so much we don't know about that site, and it's just crazy. Originally, we had different expectations we thought we were going to open, basically test, get the students with this. The house that we were looking for was enough under the surface that it would allow the students time to practice excavation to get down to it. Once they got down to it, we'd be able to open up another maybe up to 2 more excavations. That didn't happen. So we stayed in the same spot. And so we weren't able to do our original plan and based on what we had discovered in the field, radically adapt our game plans. And I really have to give a huge shout out to Dr. Carlton and Dr. Bamforth for being able to do that on the fly like that. So we continued working. You could tell I'd been out of the field for a little bit because we had, how we have the arbitrary datum set up at first with the stake. Well, one was getting loose, and I was like, what should I do about it? And everyone's like, oh, well, just sink it in further. So none of us, thought about it. So I was like, all right, let's just hammer it in. And then all of a sudden, all of our measurements are wrong. How are the measurements wrong? And it was like this who's on first thing where we had been, it was such a stupid mistake. We're like, oh, we sunk in the datum so they wouldn't get loose. So that's why our measurements are absolutely fine.
The elevation control is not under control.
But we fixed it. But it was we were freaking out for a little bit. It was just Dr. Carlson's like, Carlton, didn't you take a sledgehammer to one of those? Like, yeah, because it was falling out. Oh, oops. Just goofy
COVID.
stuff.
It's COVID, right? It has to be COVID.
And they're like, and they're like, oh, it's okay. I haven't been excavating in 2 years. Actually, I ran a field school last year for Fort Lewis College. I shouldn't know better than to do something this dumb. But we caught it and fixed it. But it was just one of those goofy things. Because I asked everyone what should we do about this? Can I just sink it in? And no one thought about it, because we hadn't had the total station up yet. If the total station was up, it wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah.
So it was a little goofy. I think one of the most, I know one of the most transformative aspects for those students is that we had the Pawnee visitation. And so originally we had over 2-3 dozen people registered to come, but because of gas prices, many couldn't afford it. So we had about a dozen, including Matt Reed. Shout out Matt Reed, who listens to this podcast.
Was on one of them. I don't have my phone near me, but he was definitely on the podcast.
He is on the podcast and still listens. Him, a cousin of mine, Phil Gover, one of the Phil Govers, Phil Gover III, and Aaron Prim, his son Felix. And also there's a bunch of Pawnee interns at the Crane Trust in Nebraska because that land is being deeded to us. So there's a bunch of interns out there growing corn, and they found out about it, so they came and visited. So they were there with us, and they got to excavate. They got to see the site. We toured them around the whole area, showing where all the other sites are, why this matters. And the look on Felix, who's, a kid, get to excavate and then be a part of that. I was I think he's going to be one of my graduate students in a decade, because that kid was just blown. And there's another part of the site where there's eroding pits, and Felix really wanted a projectile point, and they're eroding pits. So it's the context is gone. And, our view of it, including the PIs, is if those objects belong to anyone, it's descendants of it's the Pawnee. So we went to these, eroding pits, everything's washed out, context is gone. And sure enough, it was the day after it rained, and we found a complete side notch point. And Felix was so excited when he got it, he threw it in the air and lost it in the grass for a little bit. And it was freaking out trying to find it. And we're going to hold on to that to you, bud. So when you get home, and it was just such a humbling experience to have them there for a week. We fed them. I made fry bread, and it was they were giving me so much grief for my fry bread, because they're usually, your auntie or someone makes this, and this is your first time making fry bread. So they just loved heckling me on making Indian tacos. I got a bunch. It was it was a bunch of these field school guys. Everyone was super excited to have the Pawnee. We even had a day. They were there during one of our days off, And we said like, hey, you don't have to because it's your day off, but like if some of you would like to volunteer to come open the site so we can show it to the Pawnees, since they're not, 31 of you will be in there. And like half the field school showed up on one of their days off, like a lot.
Wow.
To reopen the site and work for a morning. We didn't do a full day. We did a half day. And like a lot of the students like reflected on that and just like, no, this is amazing that they're here. Cause like before they showed up, I did this whole talk on Indigenous archaeology and why this is important, and explaining them like, inviting a descendant community out is an outlier. Like this doesn't happen. Like there might be like there might be like a handful of other field schools across Canada and the United States that might do this, but like the fact we're inviting them for a week and we're hosting them, that just doesn't happen. And so the students were like, wait a second, why not? And so had this whole talk with them and explained to them Indigenous archaeology and mostly the history behind some of the stuff. And, we seeded the site, and I explained to the students, like, 50 years ago, that would have been illegal. And they were like, and really kind of contextualizing, like the work that you guys are doing here matters. And I think a lot of them really felt that. And especially I had 3 Indigenous students. So 2 were descendants. One's descendant Crow, one's descendant Lakota, and then the other's Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. And it was this weird for me. It wasn't weird. I don't know how to describe it.
I mean, it's it's not something you experience every day.
Yeah, it's not something. And there was this, I didn't favorite them, but there was a mentorship role where I was explaining to them, like I'd kind of take them aside and be like, this is why we're doing this. This is what's going on here. Like, these are things to think about. And especially for the Cherokee, I saw a lot of myself in her when I was undergraduate, and like really kind of took that to like chat with her. And we, had really honest conversations about what it's like to be Indigenous in this field and some of the things that she's been facing, and really kind of, do my best to give some sort of advice and mentorship that I didn't have, right. Coming into not only, I really didn't have it until I got to Boulder, and even then, like later in my career, it was this weird. I haven't had I had a postdoc, but not that real postdoc experience where there's that time to go from student to teacher. Like as Dr. Robinson told me, is like my learning curve is going to be steep as shit when I get to Indiana, and I felt a bit of that when I'm like with the Indigenous students of like, this is why we're doing this. Like, this is how you need to protect yourself. This is how you navigate this world. I really hope, like it, as we were talking, I think a couple of them really got inspired to pursue Anthropology Beyond, and I hope I get to see them maybe at IU as one of my students best I can. So that was like that whole experience. And the day after the Pawnees left, man, and we did what we needed to do, and we did some stuff. Like the whole prairie came to life. The yucca bloomed, the prairie roses came out, like the whole, and it was cool. The wind came back, the temperatures dropped, and like the whole prairie opened up, and like students were kind of wigged out by it. They're like, what happened? And like for me and for the Indigenous students, it was just like, oh yeah, this is what's supposed to happen. But for like some of the other students, they were like, is this witchcraft? Like they were like, it was a very interesting like clash of worlds. And for me, I was like, oh yeah, this is what needs to happen. But it was just such a cool experience, and I don't know how to describe it, and like to see how grateful all the Pawnee participants were. And like, as we were posting photos, the folks that didn't make it were like envious. And even when I posted the announcements, I only got like one negative comment. I thought half the tribe was going to burn me at the stake as a witch, but like everyone wanted to come. And so I think next year I'll be in a position to write a grant to like hire a tour bus. And also I'm really trying to get the Rickeras down, man. If they don't have a casino to stay at, they're a little bit, tent camping. Are you kidding? It's hard. It's hard.
I look like that right now. So
yeah, it's hard to convince our northern relatives to like come down and, get in the mud, for good reason. But it was, and it also, I think, was a critical part in, finishing the dissertation and like trying to get everything done. And, it was, that week-long experience reminded me of why I do what I do, and like affirmed that I need to do what I do.
Is that going to give you fuel to get these next couple of weeks?
Oh together? Yeah. My computer crashed. I didn't mention that. Yeah. My laptop died like 2 weeks in, lost all my dissertation data that I was working on. So I'm scrambling right now to get things done. And I'm like, I have an appointment with IT tomorrow to like pray to the technology gods to salvage all the work I did. Oh, dude, it was like, but it happened during that week the Pawnee came, and it was like, is this a, part of me was like, is this to focus on what I need to focus? It was just,
that's insane.
That was, I like fucking cried when my computer died. Like it was, and then of course I got it fixed. Kind of, I lost all the data, but I was able to get access to it like 2 weeks later. All it took was one IT guy with a brain to be like, oh, here's your code. I was like, are you kidding me? Yeah.
And on that note, that's your code to listen to Chris Webster talk about some beautiful things that we're selling here. So this is episode 116 of a Life in Ruin podcast. We will be right back. Welcome to episode 116 of a Life in Ruins podcast. This is segment 3. This is the segment where we tell you that we will not be doing this podcast anymore. Because Carlton's got a big boy job, Connor's losing his mind, and David's nomad. So it's been great. It's been fun. Maybe we'll make it to 117. We'll see.
I think we will.
Jokes. Totally jokes.
We just signed a new contract with the APN. I think we're kind of locked in. I think the goal is like, let's get to 150 and then see where we're at. It's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. Yeah.
So you have a couple things going on in the next couple weeks, right?
Yeah, I think one thing though is I love Bart. So I have no bartending training, but like Bubba let me bartend one of the nights and I loved it. And you know what I made for the students? Buckets of audio smokers. Like I made buckets of them. And so they saw me on them the night before, like, what? How did Carlton do that so quickly? And I'm like, AMFs. And they were just like, what is this? And I was like explaining it to them. And they were like, and I was like, yeah, because everyone at Wyoming knows me as ordering the crazy drink and everyone gives me grief for it. The next night bartending, and everyone's ordering. And we had buckets of them because the weekend prior was Lynch's reunion. They had a high school there. It's like their huge alumni week. So there's like 1,000 people in Lynch. So Bubba's goes hard and does like gets extra different beers, imports beers and liquors. And so they had buckets and homemade lemonade. And so AMFs with lemonade, and like that was the night I was headbanging on a table to Karma Chameleon. It was everyone. We all got tie-dye t-shirts. We were all wearing Bubba's hats. We're all drinking AMFs. I'm sending videos to people. Like Crabe is like, what is going on? I'm just like, AMFs, and they're like, how? Why did you do this to your students? Like, is everyone okay? I'm like, everyone's actually pacing themselves really well. It takes a while to finish a bucket of this. It's like,
dude, as soon as you sent me the picture, I knew what drink it was. I knew. It was just like, I saw like 3 or 4 liquors going in there. And I was like,
I could pour 4 at a time. I was double-headed. I'm like, here we go. And it was. This
is not part of the show. We were saying that Carlton is now becoming a bartender and is.
I love it. I had so much fun. It was a blast. Like, and even the locals were having a great time. The students were like, RTA is serving us alcohol, and I'm like, all right, Budweiser $2.25, AMF $12, and just like pouring. And I was just doing shot. It was just, I had such a fun time. I'm so glad Bubba let me behind the bar.
It was about that camaraderie, like into the students too, right? Like that created, like it just seemed like you guys gelled together. Like everyone was like just there having a good time, enjoying themselves.
The students couldn't believe it. They're like, what planet is this where we do this stuff? Like, why is our TA serving alcohol? And we're watching the Colorado Avs beat the hell out of Tampa Bay right now in the back. It's just like, go Avs, what? Avs won the Stanley Cup. Go Colorado. It was just crazy. Like, it was just this surreal experience. And all these kids are coming out of COVID and they get thrown into this field school where who's one of the people in charge? This guy, right? They're like professional by day, like night walker at night, just like doing,
by night
with zero training in bartending. And I'm just like shots. So I might become a bartender, but currently before I give up on all my hopes and dreams and bartend in Lynch, Nebraska for the rest of my life, where rent, by the way, is only $400.
And that's where I'll be moving.
It's like, I'll go live at Lynch. That sounds fine. I'll do whatever. I'll be a bartender. I love the bartender that works there. Misty's the best. She's the best. But yes, so we all know I got a tenure track position at Indiana University. As of now, it doesn't look like I have my PhD in hand, which is fine. They're allowing me till December to have PhD in hand. I'm going to be well ahead of that deadline in December. even with the backup, because I need to get it done and I have to. So I'll be an affiliate professor of anthropology and curator of public archaeology at the museum and the Department of Anthropology. Lease doesn't start till August 12th. So he sent an email today. I'm like, wait a second, when is actually my first day of work? Do I need to be there August 1st or like August 15th? Because that matters if I need to find, a lot, temporary housing. And so I don't teach the first semester. I get there and I basically curate and get ready to teach in the spring. I don't have a field school for the summer yet. Mac Corey, who's been on this podcast, he has his own IU field school, and I don't want to intrude on that because he's been putting so much work into it. So next summer, my game plan is now to go back and work at Lynch as a affiliate PI and do that with Augustine and CU Boulder.
It's kind of wild that they don't give you, or I mean, I guess it's a blessing and kind of weird that they don't give you a teaching load right up front.
It is, but it's part of my, that was part of my contract, baby. That's what I negotiated. I'm like, I don't want to teach the first semester. I need to, and the university, both departments were like, that's fair. Like they know how junior I'm coming in and like the radical change. So I don't know how I end up in departments that actually care about my well-being. Even this job cares about my well-being. And so they really want to mentor me into this and get me ready. And so I have a steep learning curve, and I still have a lot of growing up to do to go from bartending and headbanging to Karma Chameleon. I can't do that anymore. So this was my last hurrah. Some of the students definitely were aggrieved by like how perceivingly wild, like fun I would get, I guess. But I can't do that. After this, I have to become,
we'll especially bring it out of you.
Yeah,
we'll still bring it out of you. There's a couple people I think who can bring it out of you still.
I know, but it's one of those things, right? Because I'm coming into this, like I think of like, Dr. Haas, Dr. Robinson, like postdocs that I knew, like they were in their mid to late 30s. And I'm coming in like at the age of 30 to go teach graduate students and undergrads. And most grad students are older than I am. And it's just like, I just reflect on the first time that like David and Chris met me. Like I walk in wearing letters. They're like, oh, we have a Pawnee student. I'm like, yo, what's up, bro? That's me. It's like, it's like, I'm looking at my future and just like, I don't know what's going on. And so,
but I will say, like, just from my personal place, and I've told you this before, and I think people on the podcast might even see this, like your development and your maturing and everything that you've gone through in these past couple of years has made you into a fantastic scholar, human, friend, researcher, bartender, everything you've really done. And we've witnessed it before our eyes. And I know there's so many people who I've talked to about this, and we are just, we're insanely proud of you, of all that you've done and the person you've become. And it's just been really impressive to watch someone grow like you have. No, man, I deeply appreciate that. Like I owe a lot of it to like you and Connor keeping me like through this whole, journey. We started this like right when I was like my second semester of PhD, and like you guys have known me from my master's time, and it's like, but you two have always kept me grounded and like been that constant. And it's been like, I've been, I get those Facebook notifications. I like look back to like Hell Gap where I'm wearing letters and I'm harassing a rattlesnake. And it's like, I would never do that now. It's like, I can see it. And it's just like, especially this past field school, right? Where it was, now I'm a PhD candidate on my way out. And the way I treated students this year was much different than what I treated before. And even when I was at Wyoming, it was just like, the first 2 weeks at the field school, I didn't like yell to yell. It was more like, I need your attention. Listen, because like right now you're not allowed to think. I think for you. And then the last 3 weeks is more of like, as colleagues, like let's talk this through. Like, what are you noticing? Like, let's look at your unit compared to the others. Like, do you see there's a height difference between your pedestals and their pedestals? What about the landforms? And like really kind of taking that mentorship role of like, let's think about this critically and contextualize your unit, your little 1x1 as comparison to the other 30 1x1s you have going around, and really having those moments and like teaching, these students in I thought meaningful ways. To go from like, because you were drill sergeant before is what I think you called yourself, or like, I think that was your approach is like, we're here to get you into shape and to learn stuff, I'm going to be a little rough, but also taking the next step and mentoring and teaching is a huge step. I mean, it's not everyone does that well. No, not everyone does that well.
It freaked out students at first because like it was like me just kind of being loud, like, hey, we need to get this done. Where are you? Like, let's go. And there's just one day after I was talking to students at the bar, they were just like, why are you so like, it's weird because like at excavation, you're an asshole and we're scared of you. But when we're out of excavation, like at the house, you're just different. Like, what's going on? I tried to explain it to them. And then the next day we're at work, I was like, okay, I think we've hit that point. And so then I was like, all right, guys, let's get the site ready. Like, let's go up. I need like just, and like a bunch of students like, is everything okay? Like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing's wrong. Like, we're just trying to get work done. They're like, you're not yelling at anyone. I'm like, I don't need to yell. Like, oh, are you sure everything's fine? I'm like, no, you guys are fine. And it was, I don't know what got into me. It was like when you're closing that, putting the site to bed one night, I was just like, all right, guys, let's go ahead and get and they're like, whoa, what is happening? Like they were just like, wait a second. And like, it just, I just flipped the switch. I'm like, do you guys know what you're doing now? Like we should be good to go. And then I think that changed. And I saw a much with the students, they were like, okay, wait. Towards the end, like they weren't scared to ask me questions anymore. And so like I had a lot of students like approaching me and asking me stuff because like, all right, what's going on? So
I have a question. So did the answers get better? Because I know you like put them in thought on it. Yes. So hilariously bad. Like everyone failed. I think there was like one question that I saw and all those questions on your stories. They're like, okay, what pottery types are here? And everyone's like, yeah. They're like, drink water. Okay.
And if they got it right, they still had to drink water. Yeah. So if those that followed my story, people were like, this is my favorite thing ever. Don't stop this. But I think after a while, like Dr. Bamforth and Dr. Carlton needed to work, because I just go around harassing students and putting on Instagram. So we didn't give them, I'm not sure why. Like usually we give students articles to read beforehand. This year we didn't. Like we kind of waited till halfway through. And so and then also halfway through, that's when our lectures were. So like when we were doing those questions, they shouldn't have known the answers unless they were like, listen, they should have been, if they had been listening to us, they would have known it. And also and so towards the end, after the presentations and the readings had been given out, then like, oh, okay, we know what this is. So you got towards the end, there were, and there were still some students that were like struggling, but they
got better. They got better. It was just so funny to me. I mean, but you're trying to learn like all the excavation techniques and remember everything that you're learning. Like I get that that's like an overwhelming thing
for them.
Like,
but they all got the hypotenuse of a 1x1. Was it? Hey. Yeah, so 1.414, something like that, or 1.141. I'd have to look, but they got it.
This is for us people who can't do math.
Yeah. I have it written down in my notebook, and there was also like times like, because I'd get, especially, how it goes, like as the excavation goes on, the students get better. There's less for a supervisor to do. So I just started asking them like, when did the Paleo Indians start? And like Dr. Bamford and Dr. Carlson were just, they were just laugh because I would just like pace the units, just like lecturing about like, how do we know this? Like, why is I was just like Socrates in the units, because it was funny. And like some of my students, like, because there was a bunch there that I had taught like years ago. And it was like crazy to see some of those kids that were freshmen and sophomores that take my class, now seniors and juniors. And it was, what was really fascinating to me is like a lot of them remembered my lectures and would talk, and they're like, oh yeah, we know this. Carlton went on a fucking rant about this in class. And so I just kind of go around and like, students enjoyed it. They're like, but I started getting in trouble because like then students would stop excavating and think and listen. And then, Dr. Bamford, Dr. Carlson and the other GA would be like, diggy, you have to talk and answer, like dig and answer and think at the same time. And so I kept getting them sidetracked by just being like, monumentality, or like, why is collapse problematic? And like, just like, how do we understand? And the students enjoyed it. And I wish I could have done more, but like towards the end, I was getting burnt out for other reasons that were present, that I was just there to, make sure they weren't messing things up. But I wish
I just can't picture excavation units any different now. It's like Plato or Socrates, like up at the top. Everyone just like
sitting in this bright pink hoodie, just with short shorts, just with
everyone's just digging away, like looking up, like, oh, we're learning today.
But one of my favorite things is because there were so many students, and like everyone was having, like I was having a hard time remembering students. So I did these like Fight Club competitions. So like I'd like have a proposal and I'd go around secretly to the students like, who's going to win in this fight? And at first it was just like a straight up fish fight, but then I was like doing goofy stuff like, okay, this man has Hulk hands and this woman has a lightsaber. Who's winning? And like, I ended up getting like such great matchups that it always came down to like 16-14. Like they got always really close and people were like, what? They really had to think. And so I think we had like a whole tournament and trying to figure things out. It was just like, students, like they would just start dying laughing with some of the ones that I came up with. And so, and they just kind of like, how do you think of this? Like, why does she have like giant crab claws? Like, where do you think of this? And I'm like, I don't know.
It really is amazing. Like at my field school, at the end of our field school, when everyone's gelling together, and I think this happens up to most places, is that you get this like, hey, you guys just gel together as a team. Yeah. And we had a competition where people were all wearing costumes, and like there was addle competitions, and we were all speaking accents. Like I was one of the commentators speaking in like a British accent while this is being recorded on something, and like just narrating the whole thing. It just all happens like that. I mean, I know in Wyoming they had a beer tasting competition, or like a shitty light beer competition to figure out which one was the best.
Yeah,
like
we had field school games set up, so like Olympic style games, like ready to go. But just it got to crunch time, we weren't where we needed to be, and so like we weren't able to do some of that. Especially that last week, it was like, this is it, and we're not where we need to be, because we weren't where we thought we were going to be and where we were at. So it was like, couldn't do field school games, but maybe next time. It was also like as a GA, right? Especially, I learned a lot from Dr. Bamforth and Dr. Carlton how to run the excavation. Like that's what I was kind of really there for. So I chatted with them about that. Like, how do we? So it was like, even for me, it's still learning, and I think a lot more graduate students, when they're in those roles, should remember that you're still, you're there as an intermediary. Like you were expected to know some things, but also it's okay to ask for advice between other senior graduate students and also the PIs. Like you're also there to learn. So that's kind of what I took from that, because I've had a host of different experiences, right? Like from high precision vertical excavations on rock shelters in Wyoming to like now horizontal, different strategies of excavation and from so many different mentors. And it's just like, how do you synthesize all that? Like how Bob takes a different approach to Marcel than Jesse, than Doug and Casey. Like they're all coming at it from different lenses and from different things. And it's like, I looked at it as like, okay, and I reflect on this past field school, what would I have done differently? Because I'm about to be in their shoes in 2 summers that I have to get ready for. It's like, I'm going to be running a field school, 31 to 32-year-old Carlton, because my birthday will be in the field. How is this clown going to do it in a way that doesn't make people want to burn the site down and leave the field forever? So that's, I've been this past week, not only sleeping in and enjoying not being surrounded by 35 people in a Catholic hospital / Airbnb / chapel without internet and stuff. Like now I can't just like ignore people and say, oh, I didn't have service. Now I actually have to respond. Now it's just like, what's up to next?
Yeah, we'll see what's going on to next, and hopefully Carlton will be back on another podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. Would you choose still to live a life in ruins?
Yes, Connor, I would, and I'll be on next episode. And for a while, unfortunately, we'll get back onto our regular scheduled programming.
Sources or literature recommendations that you have? Anywhere I can get you on social media?
Yeah, you guys all know it. But I do want to recommend, I do for anyone that is interested in plains archaeology, which I hope more people do. The Archaeology of the North American Great Plains by Douglas B. Bamforth came out 2022, Cambridge Press. It's his magnum opus. I think it's like the first time someone has single authored an entire compendium of plains archaeology since Waldo Wadle in the 1960s. So for those that are interested, Lynch is mentioned heavily in this. I have a little piece where Dr. Bamforth thanks me.
Oh.
And so if you're interested in Great Plains archaeology, Lynch is in there, and as well as some of the transformative things we're doing. So check that out.
Will be in the show notes.
Yes, it will.
And anything written by Carlton Gover. Just look it up on academia. There's a ton of it.
Yep, it's there. And by the way, if you're listening to this show on the All Shows feed, please considering subscribing to our show and downloading directly from a Life in Ruins podcast. Not only does it help our show grow, but also allows us basically data to give to potential sponsors and advertisers that help support and fund the show. Because eventually, in order for us to do more dynamic and interesting podcast episodes and also content on Instagram and YouTube, it helps that we don't pour all of our money into it. So help us by subscribing to our show. It would be nice to make money. Yes, right now it's all pro bono. So with that, we are out. Thanks for listening to A Life in Ruins podcast.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Life in Ruins podcast, and you can also email us at alifeinruinspodcast@gmail.com.
And remember, make sure to bring your archaeologists in from the cold and feed them beer. So this is Connor's crappy joke time.
Crappy joke time.
It's the new jingle. What do you call a paper airplane that can't fly?
Trash.
Stationary.
Hilarious, Connor. That's actually really good. I like it. Stationary. I like it. All right. And with that, we are truly out.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Culturo Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.